The brother incident, Netflix's Monster Season 3, shows Ed Gein ending his brother Henry's life with a wooden log, then setting a fire to hide what happened. This never occurred. In 1944, according to biographer Harold Schechter, Henry was found with bruises on his head. However, police quickly dismissed any suggestion of foul play. The coroner concluded that asphyxiation was the cause of passing, and officials accepted the explanation of an accident without launching an investigation or performing an autopsy. Ed never confessed to ending Henry's life. There's no evidence he did it. People speculated afterward because the situation seemed suspicious, but that's just speculation, not evidence. The show took this mystery and just decided, yeah, he definitely did it to give Ed an origin story. It makes the narrative cleaner, but it's completely made up. The mother's remains. The show has multiple scenes where Ed visits his deceased mother Augusta sitting in a rocking chair. Her remains are preserved and propped up in her bedroom. Later, his girlfriend Adeline walks in and discovers the remains. None of this happened. Augusta passed away from a stroke in 1945. Ed never dug up his mother's remains. What he actually did was boarded up her room and kept it exactly as she left it, like a shrine. He didn't touch anything in there. The show needed a physical body for the horror visuals. A boarded-up room isn't scary on camera. Preserved remains in a chair are. They borrowed this directly from the film Psycho, where Norman Bates keeps his mother's remains. But the real Ed Gein didn't do that with his actual mother. The girlfriend. Adeline Watkins is shown as Ed's longtime girlfriend throughout the series. She visits his farmhouse multiple times. She has deep conversations with him. She even discovers his mother's remains inside the house. Here's the problem. Adeline Watkins was a real person. But after Ed got taken into custody, she admitted she exaggerated their relationship. She said they went to films together for about 7 months. That's it. And most importantly, she specifically stated she was never inside Ed Gein's farmhouse. Not once. The show needed someone to witness Ed's actions and react to them. They needed an audience surrogate, someone normal to show us how horrifying everything is. So they invented this whole relationship and had her enter the house, even though she never did. The real Ed Gein was profoundly isolated. He didn't have girlfriends visiting his property. The chainsaw and wrong tools. At one point in the series, Ed uses a chainsaw to end people's lives. This is pure fiction imported from the Texas Chainsaw Incident. Ed Gein ended exactly 2 people's lives that we know of, Mary Hogan in 1954 and Bernice Worden in 1957. Both times he used a firearm, a rifle, or a shotgun. He never used a chainsaw. The chainsaw is Leatherface's tool from the horror film. The show put it in there because audiences expect it. When you think Ed Gein inspired horror films, you think chainsaws. But the real Ed Gein used firearms, and that's way less cinematic, so they gave him the film tool instead of the real one. The claims he denied. The show depicts Ed having certain interactions with the remains he dug up from graves. There are graphic scenes suggesting this happened regularly. During police interrogation, Ed Gein was directly asked about this. He said no. He specifically said the remains smelled too bad for that. Investigators believed him. Ed's obsession wasn't of that nature in the normal sense. He was fixated on his mother and wanted to become a woman or recreate his mother somehow. That's why he made the skin, suit, and masks. It was about transformation, not gratification. But such depictions are more shocking and fit the conventional profile better. Characters like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs have pathology. So the show added it, even though Ed denied it, because it makes him seem more depraved and fits the horror genre expectations. The Hollywood Time Travelers. The show includes Alfred Hitchcock as a character giving speeches about art and horror. It shows Robert Bloch writing Psycho, Anthony Perkins preparing for his role, Tobe Hooper hearing stories about Ed Gein. All of these people existed and were inspired by Ed Gein's actions, but they show up in the timeline before Ed even got taken into custody. That's impossible. Ed Gein was taken into custody in 1957. Psycho came out in 1960. The Texas Chainsaw Incident came out in 1974. These filmmakers learned about Gein after he was apprehended and then made their films. They didn't exist in his life before or during his actions. The show does this on purpose. It's a meta-commentary about how true events become entertainment, but it's completely ahistorical. It's the show talking about itself, not documenting what actually happened. The FBI profiler fantasy. Late in the series, Ed Gein is institutionalized and somehow becomes a consultant for the FBI. He helps profile Ted Bundy. He receives letters from Richard Speck about Bundy. There's even a cameo from Jerry Brudos connecting to Netflix's other show Mindhunter. Absolutely none of this happened. Ed Gein was locked up in a mental hospital and was completely uninvolved with any police investigations after his own case. He never consulted with the FBI. He never communicated with other individuals. He never helped catch Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was apprehended in 1975 because he ran from a cop during a traffic stop. That's it. Ed Gein had nothing to do with it. This is pure fan service. It connects Ed Gein to the modern true events universe that people binge watch on Netflix. It makes him seem like Hannibal Lecter, this genius individual who helps catch other offenders. But the real Ed Gein was described as simple-minded. He wasn't a mastermind consulting with the FBI. The Babysitter. He didn't harm. Episode 7 shows Ed Gein taking, holding, and harming a babysitter named Evelyn Hartley in 1953. This is shown as a full extended sequence with graphic depictions. Evelyn Hartley was a real person who disappeared in 1953. Her case was never solved. But Ed Gein didn't do it. The disappearance happened 120 miles away from Ed's farm. Police investigated him as a possible suspect, and he passed a polygraph test. He had an alibi. Investigators cleared him. The show invented an entire incident that didn't happen. They took an unsolved case, decided Ed did it, and showed the whole thing in detail. This is the most criticized fabrication in the entire series because it's so blatant. They literally created a victim and an event out of thin air.